You gonna do your little dance that you were doing earlier? It's perfect. Well, Griselda, we're live, and I hope you've not had any, what do they call them? Wardrobe malfunctions, like earlier when we were testing out the camera.
Yes, I got it together. Everything
Okay.
is in place.
Y'all, she's not wearing pants. She does have a shirt on, but she's not wearing.
That's true. That's true.
Oh God, you're so funny. So we'll give everybody a few minutes to get on. This is normally I do this at 6, but I had a meeting this evening, so you were gracious enough to be here at 5 because it was your day off, and you had nothing else to do.
Nothing. I didn't do nothing productive today. I usually wash clothes, but guess what? No clothes got washed today.
Now, are you still washing clothes by hand in the sink?
Of course. No, just joking.
Oh God, you
Did
are
clean my
you're.
apartment. My apartment is like clean, super clean, organized.
No, wait a minute. You cleaned, but you still have the Christmas decorations up.
Well, that's my little milk for Santa. I'm still waiting for Santa.
Girl, that milk is spoiled. It's turned into curds now.
It's for later.
God. So everybody, thank you for joining us. We are going to have a good discussion today on the Rec Yard. Griselda met me on the Rec Yard today to discuss Lane Murray. And we had a lot of good comments when I posted in the groups about, oh, I beg to differ that Lane Murray is not the worst unit. And you're right, it's not the worst unit. It is one of the worst, but it definitely holds one of the top spots, at least in the top 3. And I think almost every single woman who has been through TDCJ will agree that Hobby deserves that dishonorable first place in being the absolute most atrocious, terrible unit you can be on. And then perhaps second would be Plain State and third be Lane Murray. But I thought I would do a series of videos in the next couple of weeks talking about each one of those units and giving our viewers and anybody who's never been in TDCJ or in the women's facility, kind of giving them a first-person perspective to what each one of those facilities, what the culture's like, and how uniquely different and equally horrifying they all are. So let's start off by lowering the music. I hope that it's still streaming on Facebook because it looks kind of stuck on my phone. But well, in for a penny, in for a pound. We're going forward. So anyway, I'd like to tell people how we met Griselda.
That's fine.
And so me and Griselda, we met at Lane Murray. I was coming back from a college class late one night, and I believe the bus had broke down in the Sallyport.
Yes.
For those of you that don't know what a Sallyport is, it's the back gate, essentially. It's where the deliveries come in and you get stripped out and stripped in. And so we had gone through the strip search process, and then we were on the bus, and it was going on 11 o'clock at night, and I was falling asleep, and it was really there was a lot of people on that bus, and I was sitting next to Griselda Casas. And I'm not real good with strangers, so I made the best effort I could. And who knew that we would, gosh, what is it, 12, 13 something years later, still be talking to one another from that one conversation. That awkward conversation about, oh, what's your name and what unit are you at? And, oh, I'm at Mountain View, and et cetera, all the different questions you ask one another. How much time are you doing? So, yes, we met on the bus when it was broke down in the Sallyport at Lane Murray, and that was
horrible.
That was horrible. It was the summertime, and we all know, especially those who have lived at units without air conditioning, even 11 o'clock at night is still extremely hot and suffocating. And we were still stuck on that bus. We hadn't been to the bathroom. We hadn't had any water. But that is how me and Crisilda met. And how fitting that we met on the bus at Lane Murray. And it was broke down in the gate. And that would foreshadow everything we know about Lane Murray. So, Crisilda, tell people a little bit about yourself, how much time you did, and what were the years that you were at Lane Murray, and your age, because that's super important too. I think as we talk about the psychological and emotional terror that we suffered at that unit, being younger people. So, take it away.
I had just turned 22 on November of 2000, and then 2 months later I got transported to Lane Murray in January. And I guess they call it the crane now, but back then it was called reception, where you went through. And the officer told me, have fun. She says, you're really, really, really gonna have an adventure there. She said, you're gonna see stabbings, you're gonna see all this stuff. And I'm just looking at her. I'm 22 years old and I'm scared. And I'm thinking, I'm going to see stabbings? And she's like, oh, yeah. She said, and plenty more. She's saying, you're doing 20-year sentence? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, well, get ready. If you're not tough now, you're going to get tough. And I just remember, why are you telling me this, lady? I'm already scared. And they talk to you. I remember the first time when I hit Lane Murray, and I will never forget this because this shaped my life. I don't remember the lieutenant's name, but he lined us all up in front of Lane Murray's cafeteria. And he said, all of y'all are under 25. He says, none of you will stay in population. None of you will make nothing out of your life. He says, none of you. And I spoke up, being the big mouth that I had at that age. Right. And I said, I don't think so, sir. I'm going to go to college and I'm going to be somebody. And he says, yeah. He said, I don't think so. Well, about 4 years later, I saw him and I said, excuse me, I got my associates. How about that? So Lane Murray, they brought you for failure. They saw you as nothing. They saw you as just this punk kid that came into their thing that they basically had to finish adolescing and raising. And you were nothing. They humiliated you. They talked to you. They didn't ever call you your given name. You were a B, a H. Just figure it out. You were nothing but your name. Mm-hmm. It was horrible. And then when they stripped you, they would make fun of your panties. And they would make fun of you had holes. They would shame you. And if you didn't shave, you know what y'all I'm talking about, girls. They would make fun of you. And they would laugh and they would point, and then they would get all the other inmates to laugh with you.
Right, because what you're talking about is the staff. And I think that's important. I know as women that sometimes we can be vicious and cruel to one another. But when we talk about that deep shaming, psychological type of abuse, it came from the staff, hands down.
Yes, hands down. And they had no problem. Don't be a big girl, baby. Don't be a big girl, because they would shame you. And it was horrible to see big girls that couldn't help it. They had thyroid problems. They had medical issues. And mm-hmm. They did not assist you with medical. And so it was sad. And I despised getting stripped by the host squad bosses, the female host squad bosses, because they were number one terrors of putting you down.
Oh, yeah. So you mentioned you were 22. You were very young when you got there. And I was classified to Murray when I was 18. Mm-hmm. I was sent from the Texas Youth Commission onto Lane Murray, and reception was reception. That's, you didn't go to Plain State or Woodman. I don't believe they existed then. So mm-hmm. That's where you were processed through. And I remember when I got to Lane Murray, they reclassified us. So we had to sit in there and wait for classification again. And when I was at Crane or the Gatesville unit at reception, they said they were going to classify me to close custody at Lane Murray simply because of my charge and my age. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what that meant. I had no idea. And so when we were reclassified, when we got to Lane Murray, I told the girls I was sitting with, I don't know. They said something about closed custody. I don't know. They're like, girl, that's cell block. That's like just a step above SEG. And I was like, what have I done? Like, I don't want that to be how I do my time. I was trying to sign up for college. And so I remember going through classification, and the warden was there, I think a captain, a major, and then the principal. This was the principal that said this to me. They were asking questions, and they were like, well, we just worry because of your age that you're going to be a disciplinary problem. But there was no disciplinary history while I was at TYC. And I remember that lady just staring at me, just with daggers in her eyes. And this was the principal. And she said, I'm looking at your IQ right now. I said, yes, ma'am. She said, you think you're so smart, don't you? And I'm like, I haven't even said anything. I'm just like, how do I answer this? And I was like, I guess. And she goes, you think you're so smart. Let me tell you, you're nothing. And I was like, what the hell is happening to me right now? And I will never forget the way that made me feel, right? Not only did it belittle me, but it also did kind of, something else rose up inside of me, like, no, I'm not going to surrender to that. I'm not. And I'll show you. If you think that I'm nothing, I'm going to show you. And so it kind of had the reverse effect of maybe what the lady was intending. I don't know, but that was kind of encapsulates the culture at that particular unit. It was from the staff all the way up through their education. You know what I mean? Just this idea that we were nothing, and you better get used to it. Nothing. And you're going to take what I give you, and you're going to do what I tell you, and because you deserve nothing else. And we were young girls at the time.
Yeah. And I had one officer at that classification. He said, because I guess they make you take the test when you're half asleep. So my IQ showed that I was kind of dumb because I was half asleep taking that test. And he said, oh, well, you got a 20-year sentence. You're going to do most of it. This was a kitchen boss. He says, it says here she's recommended for close custody as well because of her charge and because of her age. And then he looked at it and he says, nah, leave her in population. And we'll put her in the kitchen. I'll make sure I straighten her out. This is a kitchen boss. And I'm thinking, I'm just looking at them like, are you serious?
Well, it was kind of this attitude of a model of corrections that you're here for me to terrorize and punish you, right? When the punishment was that our freedom was taken away and we have to be in a prison. I mean, that's the punishment. But it was a culture of, no, it's my job not to just keep you locked in this cage, but to terrorize you while you're here. And that's my job because that's what you're here for me to do.
I'm here to take away your humanity. I'm here to degrade you and to let you know that you're not a person no more. And that's what I felt the 9 years I was at Lane Murray. I felt like an animal. I felt like an animal with no heart.
So not only, Crisilda, was it the culture, the interaction from the staff that made you feel that way. It made me feel that way for the short time I was over there till I was finally able to get to another unit. In terms of degrading, right, to make you less than human, not only was it what they were saying to you, but it was the conditions there, right? So can you explain to people what were the physical conditions of that unit? And you were there closer. You and I were there closer to the time when that unit opened. So it was a little bit more of a new facility. So I want people to imagine if it was that bad then, what it possibly could be like now.
Oh my gosh. I to this day cannot sleep with my blanket hanging over the side of my bed. And I have a queen size bed. There, you live basically in a barn with chicken wire, and this is in the K dorms, and you had red beams running down. Okay? So, guess what was crawling across those red beams at night? Mice. And then suckers would fall off into your bed. And then I would see them crawling on people's blanket. I used to catch them and feed them to the cats, me and another girl at night, because they were running everywhere, these mice. It was horrible. And then the heaters sometimes didn't work. We were freezing. We got in trouble for using blow dryers to stay warm. In the summer, we had to caulk our cubicles with soap, state soap, because ants were coming in. I mean, it was nasty. It was horrible. Who wants to sleep with rats falling? That was scary. I found the mice in my typewriter box one time.
Right.
I-
Well, because because the conditions are so bad, the rats are looking for food and something to nibble on, and certainly not is it just unpleasant to have a rat climbing up your blanket in the middle of the night, but rats carry disease, and they shit everywhere, and so you're also surrounded not just by live animals with disease, but their waste. I remember just constantly things, mattresses and bedding, even supposedly fresh laundry, smelling like rat piss.
It was horrible. The laundry, oh my gosh, I never wanted to wash my laundry because, I was 22 years old, lazy, okay? But everybody's talking about how the sheets were black. So I was like, let me try this. And back then, when I first came in, we had the powder Ajax and the powder Tide. Oh my God, if I tell you that water was black, like nighttime, it was nasty. It was
No, you have a good point. And if anybody else that's watching, I would love to hear it in the comments. Did you ever wash your state sheets that you got fresh from laundry and you washed it yourself in the sink and the water was black? That what Griselda is saying is absolutely true. You'd get clothing and linen straight from laundry, and then if you washed it in the sink yourself, the water would be absolutely black. So indicating that none of that was clean.
Yeah, and then don't forget the food, the green hot dogs.
Oh yeah, so I was gonna talk about that next. So we've got dismal living conditions, unsanitary with rodents and bugs, the heat. Like you said, in the summertime, people need to know that Lane Murray is not air conditioning. Now I know that they converted and built a section of inside Lane Murray for it's a medical kind of facility for the women recovering from surgeries, and they have their own chow hall stuff, and at least that's what the girls have explained to me. And they do have air conditioning in that little area
It was so
because
hot.
it's Lane Murray is considered, why I don't know, but it is considered and has always been considered a medical designated unit for those with disabilities and wheelchairs. And I want to point this out too, is that the women who were in wheelchairs, we were not allowed to help them. So it would be, I kid y'all not, this is real. It would be July and it would be 102, 103 degrees outside. And so you had dorms along the side, and then you've got this one main long, big sidewalk, but it's very, very wide. We called it the main street. And so it was long. We stretched the whole unit. So these women would be in wheelchairs, older ladies, that they could push themselves, but obviously they were having a hard time with it. And there was a little bit of slope in that sidewalk. And these women would be struggling to push themselves to their medical appointments or to the chow hall. And we were not allowed to help them. If you touched them to push them, you got a case, you got screamed at. And so I would go to chow or laundry or wherever and be gone in there for however long and come back and still see the same elderly lady having made it 10 feet, 10 or 15 feet in the sun.
Yeah, I didn't care. I would push them. And they say, we're going to write you up. Write it up with his 20. That's what I would tell them. Write it up along with his 20. I don't care. What if that was your mama? And they would be like, Casas, come here.
But I mean, it's true. It's like, how come this elderly lady, this elderly disabled woman in this wheelchair, why is that okay to watch her struggle to push herself to a medical appointment
Mm-hmm.
in 103 degrees? And there's no shade.
None.
It's not like Mountain View or Crane where there's a little
Trees.
semblance of trees and green grass. And it's not like that. It's like what you see more in the movies of just being a lot of razor wire. The picture in the background right now, that's at Lane Murray. I cut my hand actually reaching in there to pick those weeds in between those razor wires when I was 18 because I was on the host squad. But anyway, so it there were so many inhumane things that fuck with you, like watching those elderly, like, and the way that they screamed at the older women and the women with disabilities, and it really, and not being able to intervene out of fear, it really, like you said, it does something to you. It fucks
It
with you in a
does.
way that, like, you become
You become
hard and
and
empty.
yeah, you become empty. And by the time I was 27 years old, I had no heart no more. My heart, I had no humanity, no compassion. I saw my neighbor get her head bashed with a hot pot. And I'll never forget, I was reading Nora Roberts. And I saw this blood gushing. And I said, oh, turned around, kept reading Nora Roberts. Like nothing. Like nothing. Like there's not a human being there being hurt. And I remember them calling us out. Did you see them get her head bashed? No. Casas, you live right across from her. I'm sorry, I was reading Nora Roberts. That's more important. Okay, thank you. Because you knew it was a spoken rule on Lane Murray. You write a statement, you're gonna get your butt beat. You're gonna get cut up or you're gonna get beat. So you do not write statements. You do
Right.
not write statements against anybody. You do not snitch. You act like you didn't see nothing. Do you want to get beat up? Then that's what you do. You go talk to the law.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned at a very young age, you don't say nothing. I don't care if your neighbor died. You don't say nothing.
Right, because of the retaliation, either from the guards or from the women that you were incarcerated with, that was real. And I think, I think the threat of that is real at any unit, but especially at Hobby and Lane Murray, that threat was as real as it is on a men's unit.
Oh
Now,
yeah,
Mountain View and Crane, I mean, you're probably going to get, some repercussions. Maybe somebody's going to cross you out, or maybe do something like that. But at Lane Murray and Hobby, those were real threats to your person.
and I
There's
tell
no way in the world at one of those units that I'm going to report anything, and that goes against everything in my soul. But you don't want to get cut in your face. You don't want to get hurt.
and you learn the hard way. I learned because I was already uh I was fixing to be 30, and I was already trying to get off this unit. And this girl, I'm not gonna mention names, she got bashed so bad with a lock from her girlfriend that her eye was basically popping out. And they told me, please, Casas, please write a statement. So I said, going against everything that I was taught there, being there 9 years, I go into the lieutenant's office and I told the lieutenant, if this gets out, know this, I will fight. I will fight. And I said, because if somebody comes after me, I'm not folding. I will fight because I know y'all are treacherous and I know y'all are going to leak it. But I'm doing this to help this girl out. And they're like, well, Casas, we're not going to say nothing. Oh, they leaked it out. Within 3 days, I was getting threats from this girl.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I'm going to get you, Casas. And I said, let's throw down, baby. I got a 20-year sentence. Well, it was a miracle. I got shot off of Lane Murray to Mountain View to go to college. Well, then in the fluke of it, I got sent back 2 years later to Lake Murray, and that girl was there. She had not forgot,
God.
and she was doing a life sentence. She did not forget. She saw me in the kitchen and slopped my food. She said, "That's all you get, B." And she said, "And I'm coming after you." And I said, "That's great." I said, "You come back. You come after me because I got hands. So you come after me." And I was scared. I'm not gonna lie because I know how to fight, but I don't like to fight. And I was like, "That's fine. Come after me." So the whole time I was there for like 3 days, I had to watch my back.
Mm-hmm.
I had to watch my back, especially because Lane Murray, when they let everybody out in that main street, you get lost. So that girl could get me easily, and no laws would come and help me.
Right. No, they're not.
No
They're
laws
not.
would come and help me. So I had to make sure that I was aware of all my surroundings because that's what you get whenever you write a statement. and
Yeah.
and I paid the price. Thank God the girl didn't, get me because I was ready. And they said she carried blades in her mouth. And I was like, so I said, what do I do first? I said, oh, punch her in the mouth so she can bust her lip.
Right. For anybody that doesn't understand blades in the mouth, so we are allowed basic razors to shave with, the little plastic big kind of razors. And so what we would do is we would clip the plastic that holds them together and very gently pull that single thin that blade off of that razor. And they were so thin that you could put them inside of your cheek up along your gum line and not you it didn't cut. I mean, because it's just completely nestled in your cheek. And that way, if something happens, you can just pull it out of your lip. And I mean, it's pretty flimsy, but you hold on to it the right way, you can do enough damage quick enough that yeah, it would matter and it would hurt, and it happened a lot. And like you said, if somebody has blades in their cheeks and you bust them the right way, it could go very bad for them. So I appreciate that you sharing that about the threats of retaliation there, because it wasn't just from the other women, but also from staff as well. But let's talk about the food real quick, because I always like to mention that Carrie Blakinger did an excellent article at the beginning of the pandemic about just how bad the food is, and she had called me and said, Jennifer, is it always like this? Like, I want to make sure that I'm really understanding this as I write this. And I said, those pictures that she had, shared with me, I said, it's always like that. Every lockdown, even in the chow hall. So those pictures are nothing new. And people for the first time really got to see how we were fed. And the general public was actually pretty horrified by it. Because it was not even as well as you would feed an animal. And so I found that Lane Murray's food, and not really being able to sit down and eat for very long, you had 20 minutes from the time you walked in the chow hall, which you stand in line for 15 minutes and you get 5 minutes, if that, at the table, which was very different at other units like Crane and Mountain View. And I noticed that immediately. We went back to Lane Murray for a big Pure Education training, and I was with Alexa and Brittany and several other people. And, some of them had never been off of Mountain View, where we got to sit four to a table and have our full 20 minutes. And the staff culture was very different there. And here we are in the chow hall at Lane Murray in the heat and the sweat, with rocks in our food, and some of it was spoiled, and bugs and the staff screaming at the top of their lungs.
Don't forget they hovered over your table.
Hovered and screamed and threatened. And so explain to people listening and watching, what did that food look like?
Oh my gosh. I was 22. I did not realize what I was eating. There was green hot dogs. I mean, these hot dogs were green, folks. And Lane Murray had a thing. I did not know there was other food in the world of TDCJ, because Lane Murray loved to feed you pork. That's all they basically fed you. And they would give you, quote unquote, herbs from the, I guess, from the host squad, like whatever they did in the host squad, but they didn't clean this. I ate a bug one time and didn't realize I was eating a bug till I heard a crunch. I was like,
Griselda, I've watched you pick bugs off the ground and eat them.
yes, yes, but
I'm just kidding.
besides the
I'm
point.
just kidding.
And so, but this bug was fed to me. I didn't have a choice.
Hey, one time I had beans that had glass in it. It had rocks.
Oh yes, yes.
That pork was spoiled.
I ate spoiled chicken one time and didn't realize it because I had severe allergies and I didn't know. And I was wondering why everybody around me was so sick. And then I got sick. And come to find out, we were eating bloody chicken that was not cooked all the way. And then one time I drank spoiled milk. And I mean,
and and the thing is, people don't understand, like you said, like I didn't have a choice. This is the food that was given to me. And if you can't get to commissary, which was an absolute nightmare at Lane Murray and Hobby too, trying to get to commissary. And if you're indigent, you have no choice but to depend on that chow hall.
exactly.
And the servings are not what they're supposed to be. And the food is rotten. Like we are feeding other humans rotten, undercooked, dirty, spoiled food.
Yeah.
And the water wasn't always to the right standard either.
Oh no, that water would come out like yellow sometimes and brown. And my mother got sick of cancer in 2008, 9, and she couldn't send me money. And I remember one time I was so hungry and I was trying to eat my sandwich, and the officer hit the table right next to me and said, "Your time's up." And I still had all this food. And I said, "I'm hungry." He says, "I don't care if you're hungry. Go starve for all I care." And I just remember being 27, 28 years old. And I just remember laying in my bunk crying because I didn't have food, And at that time, I didn't know how to hustle. I didn't want to hustle. I learned that later in time, how to hustle. And then when I went to Mountain View, I never forget when I got to Mountain View and they let me eat. I remember I ate a hamburger cooked with real lettuce. And I just remember I was sitting with Tina and I just busted out crying because I had never been treated like a human to eat my food. And in my first visit on Mountain View, they told me, "Have a nice visit." And I remember looking at the officer like, "You don't know me. Why are you telling me hi? Or why are you telling me have a nice visit?"
Yeah.
And she said, "What unit did you come from? Did you come from Hobby or Lane Murray?"
Right, because they already knew. They already knew.
They already knew. And I said, "Lane Murray." She said, "Honey, you're okay. I'm sincere about this." And I said, "What do you want, ma'am?"
Hey, let me stop you here because I see Janie's asking a question. She said, "How about that stuff they put together as bread?" I don't know. I think you're talking about a food loaf, maybe. Are you talking about a food loaf?
Yes, they gave it to Seg.
Yeah. So what a food loaf was, for anybody listening or watching that doesn't know what that is, it means that you are being punished. Usually you're in Seg, and what they do is they take the entire meal, whatever it was. So you got carrots, green beans, and meatloaf, and 2 slices of bread. And what they do is they take all of it together and they mash it into a loaf
and bake it.
And that's your dinner. And that's what a food loaf is. And they are disgusting. All that stuff gets put in your stomach and gets mixed together. But when you take everything, imagine going out to eat and whatever's on your plate, and you just take it all and mash it into this log or a ball and cook it, and then now eat it. And it was used as a way to punish the girls who were in Seg. It's not a formal punishment. I mean, it wasn't something that is an option on a disciplinary case. It was just like, oh, well, we're going to put this person on food loaf now because they were throwing food or throwing other things. But sometimes it was just because the officer was being an asshole or you did something they didn't like. And Janie says, yes, food loaf, absolutely the worst. Griselda, what I'm going to try to do, and we'll see how well this goes. Okay. I'm going to put the link in the chat for anybody that would like to come on camera and speak about their experience with Lane Murray. So the link will be from StreamYard, and I'll add you to the stream if you say anything crazy or you do anything weird, some people do, honey. I've been in Zoom meetings where people Zoom bomb and you just have to click them off. So just be forewarned that I am omnipresent and I have the controls, and I'll just delete you off the stream if you say something absolutely bizarre. But I want to give people a chance to interact with us, and if they have anything that they would like to share, we've got about 20 minutes left, and just maybe 2 or 3 minutes about their perspective of about any time that they spent at Lane Murray.
We didn't touch on the medical real quick.
We'll touch on the medical because I think that's important, because now Lane Murray being designated as a medical recovery unit seems very bizarre, considering how bad the medical care there was for us.
I had my own experience. Long story short, I had asthma in my 20s, and I had what they called asthma induced by allergy and weight gain, where you don't have a normal asthma attack. You feel like somebody's stepping on you, and your lungs can collapse and you don't even realize it. And it's medical. And so I went in there and I was like, I can't breathe. And the nurse said, you just don't want to work.
God.
You're making this up. And I remember looking at her and I said, ma'am, my mother's a registered nurse, and I will have her call up here. And I'm not making this up. It is in my charts. She said, you're making it up. Just sit there, and when I feel ready, I'll send you back. And this other compassionate nurses never made it, just so y'all know.
They don't last long.
So she came in and she said, stop crying. How old are you? And I said, 27. She said, come here. She listened to my lungs and she said, oh my gosh. She says she needs a breathing treatment fast. And they said, is there a doctor here? They're like, yes. And then I said, I'm allergic to albuterol. And they're like, oh my gosh. So they had to give me antibiotics and this breathing treatment. And I remember that fat nurse that didn't want to help me. I passed by her.
Honey, that's mean.
Well, I did tell her. I said, you B, I am not faking it. I called her a B, and I told her I am not faking it. I said, would you have let me die? And I said, yeah, you would have. And I remember the officer telling me, Casas, that's enough. Keep your mouth shut. And I said, okay. But she would have let me die sitting there.
Right. And so many, and I think all of us that have been incarcerated, no matter where you go, it seems that medical care in TDCJ is so piss poor and so dismal. It is shocking. It's shocking. And it's not just the level of treatment, medical treatment. It's the way that we're treated as less than human. And it's very shocking, because you would think people in the medical field would never treat another human being like that. But consistently, without fail, medical staff, they were either very bizarre and weird, like the many male PAs that we had, and doctors who were responsible for our gynecological exams and our pap smears. I had one that was eating a piece of cake.
Yeah.
No, that's not a joke. Like he was eating a piece of cake while I had my legs up in the stirrup. Yeah, I was just staring at the ceiling. He was like, the cake from the chow house is good today. What do we got here? This little miss here. And I'm like, oh my God, he's eating cake and talking to my vagina like, like she's a cartoon character. And there were other times that male PAs did much worse to girls, and would send the nurses out of the room, which they were never supposed to be alone with us, but consistently, it's just, and Murray was one of the worst when it came to medical care.
Yeah.
So I do want to, talk a little bit about my personal experience at Lane Murray as an 18-year-old on the field squad known as the host squad. Probably among the top worst experience of my incarceration. And hold on a second. Janie is saying something. I'm I'm sorry, I'm going to highlight her comment because she caught my eye. She goes, I'm trying to come on with you guys. I can't figure out. I know, honey, that StreamYard link, I'm sorry. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Crisilda had a little bit of a problem getting on earlier.
I read her comment. I can read the comments.
Okay, good. Let's talk about less fortunate like myself. That sister and family had to help us out through the grace of God. I had good friends that helped me through. And she makes a really valid point, right? Like to have family support and people on the outside. I think that's, for those of us that have been successful, I mean, that was what made or broke us, right? Is because that we did have family to help us out, and a lot of people don't. And those that had to just do their time without it, you know, my hat's off to you and my respect to you, because it was that difficult for us, and we had support. I can't even imagine, because we saw it, the people that didn't. And a lot of times people who didn't have any support, any family or friends on the outside, they were railroaded and run over by the system and the staff far more than anybody else, because they had no one to advocate for them if something happened. At least those of us that had someone could make a phone call. Now, how effective those phone calls could be in changing a situation, it at least showed the administration that, oh, there's somebody that's going to call and bother me and report me and give me a problem. So perhaps I don't lock Crisilda up without due process for 2 months, where someone without support, they just handled them and did them any kind of way they wanted to.
Yeah, my mom had to call Huntsville one time, and because they were doing us bad on Lake Murray, and my mother called, and they told me, your mother called and she threatened us with Huntsville. And I said, oh, my mother will call because she knows people. Because where we're from, there's a bunch of male units. So my mother went and asked other correctional officers, how do I go about this? And because it was my mother, they told her where to call and how to call. And boy, believe me, she called and she had no problem. She got me out of the kitchen. Thank you, mother.
Yeah, so I appreciate Jenny adding that, and that's another point for us to really look at. And perhaps maybe we'll do a video in the future just talking about what does support feel like, you know, and how our faith carries us through. But before we go, I do want to talk about that host squad at Lane Murray, because it deeply traumatized me. Like I said, one of the worst experiences of my 20 years of incarceration was those few short months at Lane Murray when I was just 18. You know, so for anybody that is wondering what the host squad is, you can see the picture in the background. This is a little bit of what it can look like. But typically, the worst part of it, especially for me, is that those old chain gang movies that you would see where people were lined up and they had a garden hoe, which we called an Aggie, that you had to be in a straight line and you had to, in a cadence, and they made us sing and construct songs to chop to. That's what you call your chopping. And you're lifting that Aggie all the way over your head and you're bringing it down and you're chopping in step with one another. And it has to be on rhythm. So, you know, 1, 2, 3, a 4 step, 1, 2, 3, a 4 step. And you're chopping constantly while you do that. And you do that so long on one arm that oh boy, we're like, boss, please, can we switch it over? Can we flip it over? Meaning flip the Aggie over to the other arm and then 4 step with that arm. And we would do that for hours in the field. And, you know, most of the time when TDCJ talks about the field, they kind of paint this picture of, you know, we're gardening, which is true. We did do the gardens too. We picked corn and we planted potatoes, but I'm going to say that was maybe about 20% of the time. Most of the time it was out there chopping on weeds that the tractor could just quickly go over. But it was, I think, a cultural thing, especially in the South, to still have this idea of a chain gang with a boss sitting on the horse with a shotgun. And we had several squads. There was usually about 20, 25 people on a squad, and we had about 6 or 7 of them, and we'd all turn out that back gate. It was just a sea of women. And thank you. I love this. She's got it down right here. And we're all going, that would be it. And I was so little and frail. I remember my boss, his name was Boss James, who his brother ended up being my commissary boss, who was a wonderful human being. But Boss James on the host squad was an absolute total prick. And I'm going to say that and own it, because he was. And he would say degrading things to us. He would, I don't want to get into all that with the last 15 minutes, but being so little and frail, Crisilda, I was chopping on it as hard as I could. Honey, as hard as I could, barely hitting a tuft of grass.
Asma saved me from chopping.
Oh man, barely, little dirt, barely moved. And I would, the women were mean to me. They screamed at me. They called me. And it was almost like it was provoked and pushed by the host squad boss for the women to behave that way. To take the women who are a little bit weaker, or the heavyset women, and just nail them and shame them and nail them. And I remember I would go back in at the end of the day and just be in tears. I was hungry. I was constantly hungry. I had blisters on my ears from the sun. My hands were bleeding. And I refused to give up. And I would just go out every day and continue to do the absolute best I could. And one day he pulled me out in front of everybody. And he said, "What the hell's wrong with you?" And I said, "Sir, I'm trying. I'm doing the best I can." He goes, "I don't want to hear about you trying. I want you to fucking do it." And I said, I am. He said, "Are you a crackhead?" And I said, "No, sir." He said, "Because you look like a crackhead. You spent your whole life in the crack house." And so everybody's laughing and laughing like, "Oh, this little crackhead can't keep up." And it's like, I said, "No, sir, I have never seen crack. I've never done drugs." He said, "Yeah, look at you all frail and skinny and poor looking, and you're not going to amount to anything." And just on in front of this group of women, 30, and there was another squad there. And I remember just standing there by myself, Crisilda, just fighting back the tears. I was like, I am not going to cry in front of this man and in front of these women. And the sergeant came over. He was a very large white man with a very red face and red neck. That's real. Rednecks are real. Their faces, their whole face and their neck turns red in the sun. And he started laughing. He said, "Yeah, that's a little crackhead right there." And I was just like, the way I felt in that moment, I don't really, even all these years later, know how to articulate what that felt like.
It's sad.
And to have men sitting on these horses with guns and holding shotguns and antagonizing the women to berate me in the same way, and just being 18 after having been through the horrendous things that I was put through at TYC, and then not only the trauma of my offense. And Lane Murray really scarred me. It really, that whole experience, the whole unit, but that host squad experience, not just the physical labor. And I remember that same sergeant took us up the hill, the mountain behind Lane Murray. And all the squads were up there, and we were chopping on it going down the hill. And the sergeant came over there and he said, "You can't get these women under control?" And he said, "Well, I mean, it's slope and one of them fell." And he said, "Let me tell you bitches something. Put your Aggies down." And he said, "We're going to do this in the only way y'all know." He said, "Y'all get on your knees because y'all are used to being on your knees. And you're going to pick up a rock and you're going to chop on it all the way down this hill. And you're going to stay on your knees and do it, because that seems to be the only way y'all understand that." And I remember picking up a rock and just pounding away at the ground, and we're kind of sliding down the hill. and I again still struggling to not cry, because you and I both know that crying in prison is a terrible sign of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say this, the early injustices that I experienced as a teenager at Lane Murray, I've never hated those women on the host squad, or those women that I was locked up with that were mean to me. They were just trying to survive. They're all acting out of trauma. They're all acting out of being triggered. But I definitely hold responsible the system and the guards that did that to us. And it planted a seed inside of me of rebellion and a deep desire to make injustices right.
Exactly.
And it started when I was 18, and it still burns in my chest just as hot and furious as it did that day.
You know how you experienced a host squad? I never experienced a host squad because of my asthma, but I experienced an SSI and SEG. And not all the guards, but majority of the guards there in the J2 and J1 were mean. And I remember they told me, you're going to clean all this shit up. This inmate had put it all over the walls and everything. It was horrible. And they gave me gloves, but they weren't going to give me bleach.
Mm-hmm.
And they were telling me, you're going to clean it now. And I said, no, I'm not. You're going to give me bleach. And I said, you're going to give me a change of clothes. And they're like, no, we're not. And I said, the hell you're not. You better call a lieutenant. You better call somebody. Because if I'm going to be on my hands and knees cleaning, you're definitely going to give me bleach. And they gave me bleach, but they talked to me so horrible. Horrible. I mean, I will never forget that day. The girls that were with me couldn't speak English, broken English, that I was the only voice they had to defend, to say, you're treating us wrong.
Right.
You know, and they gave us toothbrushes to clean this. Mm-hmm. And then they, the edges and all this, it was horrible. And I never forget, and I know I probably shouldn't say this, but I walked in, and I still, to this time, I almost cried that day. I walked into SEG, and the officer said, get out, Casas, get out. And I was like, why? They were bringing down a girl that hung herself. Oh, my God. To this day, that bothers me. That it was like no caution for life. They just cut her up, cut her down, and just like nothing.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because suicides at Lane Murray happen a lot. It doesn't get reported, or if it gets reported, it's not published till a year later. I know that there was a suicide, not last year, but the year before, that didn't show up for the longest time in the data. And Wolf makes a good comment here. He says, what y'all are talking about is ongoing state-sanctioned violence, and how do we stop it? And I think that's an important note to end on, is that as advocates, we talk about these issues and we share our stories. And again, I say this a lot, is that narrative is at the heart of advocacy, right? So telling our stories, sharing these issues in a way that make people realize we're talking about real human beings here. And too, I think it's important to note that some people will say, well, you're criminals, you deserve it. But let me tell you something. When the state is allowed to dehumanize a population, they will continue to dehumanize other populations, right? Until there's no one left. And there's a famous quote about that. Because it does something to our humanity. And I think it's odd that the state of Texas wants us to understand our mistakes in the things that we've done to hurt people, by then hurting us and treating us as animals. It makes it very difficult to recover our humanity, what's left of it. So I certainly commend anyone who, even though we all still have our struggles, and like Penny says, you've come a long ways. Penny, you have too. We all have. And the way that we stop this state-sanctioned violence, because understand something, when the state knows that something is happening and they do nothing, it is reckless indifference. And we've talked about that before, right? Especially when you filed your lawsuit for another time.
Oh, yeah.
But and it's state sanctioned because they approve of it by not doing anything about it. And they know these things happen, and they do nothing to correct them.
Yeah, that is very true. And
And
it's time to
here,
recover.
Cher says, here's the thing: the purpose of incarceration is the punishment, not the state-sanctioned violence and abuse. You're absolutely right, and we mentioned it earlier. Is that there was, especially the culture at Lane Murray, and I think it kind of bleeds into other facilities too. Of course, is that they don't understand our punishment, right? Is that our freedom was taken away from us. It is not their job to further punish and abuse us with the bad conditions, with the shaming, with the psychological terror. That is not their job. And how do we change that, Wolf? I think we all really know the answer, and that's getting the people out of office that agree with this, that do nothing about it. A lot of times people on the inside, they don't understand why certain bills don't pass. Well, what happened? Well, I can tell you what happened is that the people that run our state are not going to vote for things or enforce things that would correct these problems because they don't believe it's a problem. And until we vote those people out, that's not going to change. And that's what it all boils down to. And that's how we fix it. And especially without independent oversight of the prison system, and we're relying on the prison system to report on itself, we can forget it. So those are two major things that we need to look at as we move forward in trying to correct these atrocious things that happen to human beings that are locked up in the cages in Texas. Is that we have to have different people in office, and that means we have to vote. And we can't wait on TDCJ to make the changes because they already know about them. So it takes our voice, and it takes us all continuing to tell our stories, just like you and I have done here. That's the whole purpose of my channel. And being on the Rec Yard is that we can be in community with one another. And I know I just kind of got fired up, but well, honey, we're down to 2 minutes here.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody.
And this is Crisilda, aka Possum, aka Big Thumbs. Show them your thumb, baby.
Let's see. There we go.
Okay, she's got abnormally large thumbs, and so it's hard for her to text. So she's like, "Just call me." We worked together in the library for a long time, and we lived at Mountain View together as neighbors for a couple of years. And she's a rascal, this Crisilda. I certainly enjoy all the comments, and I'll go back through the other comments when later on today.
Oh, there was more
this
comments?
evening. Yeah, go to the pages and check out the comments. And I love to hear what other people's opinions are. And Janie, sorry, the StreamYard link didn't work. I think you have to open it maybe on a tablet or the computer. I've had some issues with the link before, especially if you are using Apple products for some reason. So as we wrap up, Crisilda.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at the comments.
Oh, girl, I got to get in another meeting in a minute, but you got that. You got that stuff. No. So to end on a light note, and because it's my show.
Oh, God.
If you've been watching, you already know what I'm going to ask.
Yes, Taylor Swift. I listen
to
yeah.
Okay, well, don't cut me off while I'm talking. But what is your favorite Taylor Swift song?
I don't remember.
Man, I can't believe you get up on here with me and not have that one question answered and prepared.
I'm sorry, but I don't remember.
I take back all the good things I said.
It's okay. 6:00, your next meeting.
hey, you, like I said, don't shut me off or talk over me. Well, I'll name one for you. Okay. And My Tears Ricochet.
Never heard that one.
Okay, so look up Tears Ricochet. It's off one of her recent albums. It's
Okay.
brilliant. It's haunting. So listen to it later, okay? And then we'll analyze it some other time.
Okay.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate all your comments and share L here off of watching on YouTube. So thank you guys. And I look forward to next week. I hope to do a video about hobby next week. That should be very interesting. And see, somebody could answer the question, Crisilda.
That's fine. Very good, Cher. That was great.
Damn. I knew you were trouble. That's a good one.
Yeah. That's
Anyway, all right. I got to let y'all go. And everybody stay out of trouble. And we'll see you next week on the Rec Yard.
Okay. Bye.
Get out of here.